This video has really been a long time coming. Much like the PC classics that I use in my videos as examples, Star Citizen is something that is generally always hovering in the back of my mind. But I am an outlier, as I do not think the Digital Foundry audience has been following the game's development to the obsessive detail that I have. That near pitch-perfect crowdfunding campaign 7 years ago hooked me immediately, and I have not let go since. That makes covering it for a Digital Foundry a hard task. What can I say about such an immense phenomenon, especially when I personally have so much to say about it on a technical level? Well, I have to start somewhere, and I think its Alpha 3.7 released but a few days ago was a good time to start. This video will serve as a technical primer guide of sorts, going over what the game is, where it currently stands, and what makes it deserving of attention. With that in mind, what on earth is Star Citizen? Simply put, Star Citizen's aim is to be a PC exclusive, first-person, massively multiplayer space simulation, with hitherto unheard of scope and attention to detail, all built on a state-of-the-art and future-looking game engine. The final design of the game after it leaves alpha and beta thereafter would be a universe with multiple and ever-expanding star systems, where thousands of players would trade, mine, explore, band together as corporations and compete with each other for resources. They would do this while also competing and cooperating with a non-player character or AI population that is roughly 9 times that of the player base. So quite a lot. Being PC exclusive means its development goals and visual features are not statically attached to 7-year-long console cycles, hardware, or periphery support. This is actually a rare thing, as Star Citizen is targeting AAA graphics and simulation on CPUs and GPUs which are decidedly faster than those found in the PS4 or Xbox One X. And it is a moving target, only getting faster over time. This allows the game to have technical goals not doable on said console hardware. The entire core design of the game is enabled through its lofty minimum hardware requirements, applying and enhancing the level of ambition from the incredibly large all the way down to the incredibly small micro details that the game is achieving. To give you a sense of what I mean of lofty hardware requirements, Star Citizen's system requirements and gameplay streaming are designed around 8-threaded Intel Core i7s, at least 16 gigabytes of system RAM, and SSD storage bandwidth and I/O speeds. The minimum level of detail, the size of objects, the wealth of objects and their diversity as your starship goes through space or across planet surfaces is determined by that high spec. For example, those without SSDs are left in the dust with an unsupported experience. Just loading up the game on a 7200 RPM HDD in RAID 0 config takes nearly 11 times longer to get into the standard solar system than with an NVMe SSD. And when you finally get in-game, the entire game is streaming things in and out in the background in a radius around the player and via other heuristics, which absolutely thrashes the game performance on anything but an SSD, decreasing your average frame rate and adding in many hitches and pauses. When we at Digital Foundry get excited about the concept of next generation consoles having 8 cores and 16 threads, or SSDs, we are excited by the notion of what new types of gameplay experiences or simulation or physics that new minimum spec might allow. That is what Star Citizen is essentially doing in the here and now, and it is going to be increasingly doing so in the future, requiring more hardware as more of its systems come online. Star Citizen is basically a next-generation game in the making, and one you can try out right now. But having lofty hardware requirements is not exactly technically interesting in its own right, but what such requirements enable is that level of scale and detail. Starting at the grandest view of the game, all the systems for graphics, simulation, etc. are all in a 64-bit coordinate system. This does not mean necessarily how much memory the game can address, rather the size and accuracy of the playable space the engine can represent. Many games' engines limit their world size and simulation aspects to 32-bit accuracy, for simplicity and reasons of CPU speed and memory usage. This in general limits game world sizes to a few dozen kilometers before that precision of the calculation holding the world together starts to break down. Areas far away from the world origin, as it is called, literally start to fall apart, wobble, and cease to function as the game cannot reliably place objects and animations with necessary precision. Star Citizen, with its 64-bit coordinate system, can cover distances with centimeter accuracy with a radius from the distance of the Sun out to the planetoid Pluto, multiple billions of kilometers with accuracy versus a few dozen kilometers with accuracy. To ferry you across such voids, you need a starship, and a fast one. In Star Citizen Alpha 3.7, you spawn at a deep space station, call upon your ship at a public garage, enter it, and fly off that station at generally low speeds of about 1 to 500 meters per second. It's really too slow to get from planet to planet though. To cover the vast distances of space to places of interest, you then accelerate your ship with its quantum drive to a low percentage of the speed of light. But that speed is not an illusion, Star Citizen. This is all happening in that 64-bit world coordinate system. The game is not putting you into a loading screen, an instance zone, or out of the play area as you enter this incredibly fast speed. You are actually moving that fast in the game world itself. From your perspective, you can see other ships accelerate out to that speed and then wink into oblivion as their ship gets too fast for a single frame to even show. That incredibly fast ship hurtling through space has its own frame of reference, where you can get out of your chair, engage in FPS combat, or do anything while your ship moves at those incredible speeds. That is a rather unique technical feat for a multiplayer game. The game's multiplayer syncing is not just limited to that speed and those large dimensions of space, but the physicalization in that space as well. You can leave one frame of reference and zone of gravity or speed and enter another without so much as a loading screen. But you'll probably experience some severe subjective disorientation. What do I mean by frame of reference? Well, check this out here. Here, you can see my character leaving the artificial gravity of their ship, entering the low gravity of general space, and accelerating on inertia and suit thrusters. I then enter another frame of reference in another ship, tumble about as its artificial gravity affects me. My new frame of reference to the floor is on something that is spinning, so you can change zones of gravity and reference even though they are moving. This is all in a multiplayer game environment. To make sure that such physicalization works and that all the cooperative aspects work for the game online, your view in first person has to align with your third person character in the eyes of other players. So your first person character and animations are the same as your first person one. A few other games do this, but Star Citizen's attention to detail in animation or its assets put it on a unique pedestal. As an example of what I mean, when discharging a rifle, another person can see how your character aims into their sight with their viewing eye aligning perfectly with the barrel. How the recoil that you feel when shooting in first person aligns perfectly with the arm and head movement another person sees. That elaborate and agile reload you see in first person is the same as someone else sees. That detail even extends to the weapons themselves, where if you look closely at ballistic weapons, you can see how rounds chamber into the rifle from the magazine. You can even see them visibly in the barrel of the gun. That attention to detail for small things and being synced over multiplayer extends to your character itself, where you have a very unique take on character creation in Star Citizen. Other games currently or in the past allow you to manually manipulate joints and vertices in the character face. You have great freedom here, but the character models produced quickly enter the uncanny valley, or by necessity cannot be realistic. There are entire YouTube channels dedicated to some of the monstrosities people create here. Star Citizen, on the other hand, uses a genetic approach to character creation, where the game has a number of scanned-in human heads from real people with various physical features representing the breadth of humanity. You, as the creator, blend between various physical features from the various heads. Like, you can take 30% of the eyes from one head, combining it with 70% of the cheeks from this one, or the skin tone from this head. the greater the pool of scanned heads available means the greater diversity and customizability for your character. And by keeping these customization limits to real scanned heads of real humans, it prevents the ability for less than stellar character models that enter that extreme uncanny valley. The limits of the possibility are those limits of possibilities of how real human beings can actually look. It enters the realm of the surreal when you realize that you can hook up a camera and record your face and have that animation be played back on your avatar, so any other players can see you talking when you utilize voice over IP, or face over IP in this case. Quite a lot of detail for being something driven by a local webcam. A bit weird too. So no more rolling standard male or female shepherd to have a visually pleasing animation or character model experience. All of these things are just a fraction of the larger technical achievements the game has already made in its alpha form. I've not even talked about how the game generates its planets, its moons, the various biomes, and its various cities. Nor have I talked about some of the physicalization features done for characters and ships, showing off some cool procedural components for damage and visuals. But that is something for another time. If you do happen to load the game up today, what can you actually expect beyond these technical things? Like I said at the beginning of this video, Star Citizen has the goal to be a massively multiplayer first-person space simulation, but it's not 100% there yet. As I see it, there are about 3 main things getting in the way of that vision coming together. The first is rather obvious, as is servers do not hold thousands of players in them currently, rather up to around 60 if I'm not mistaken. To get so many more people in one playable instance, that requires so-called server meshing technology to be added into the game, where multiple different servers work in a lattice and hand off information and simulation tasks to each other cooperatively. This task is still in development and something to be added in the future. The second thing getting in the way is NPC behavior. While NPCs are in the game right now milling about and shooting at you in space or on the ground, they are a bit odd at times and limited in their behaviors. They're not player facsimiles at the moment that they eventually should become. To make them better in general and have more simulation of the game world, the game still needs to integrate something called server object container streaming. At the moment, the game servers are pretty overloaded with tasks and can slow down as more AI and simulation occurs over time after players spawn and interact, thus limiting NPC counts and NPC behavior right now. Server object container streaming will intelligently cull and time slice aspects of simulation so that much more of it can happen at any given time, paving the way for more detailed AI simulation. Likewise, that's also coming in the future. The last thing getting in the way of more complete vision in the game is persistence tracking. Right now, your characters or ship items and status are only persistent from patch to patch, so quarterly. For the game to take on its MMO mantle, it really needs to be perfectly consistent over time, regardless of game version. Full-on persistence tracking for item placement or the status of all the NPCs and characters over time requires some extremely beefy servers, so it is scheduled in the future to come out concurrently with server object container streaming. So if you hop in the game right now, you can expect to have a good time with your friends and enjoy some amazing sights and battles and simulation, but an incomplete experience next to the intended one. And since it is an alpha game, getting quarterly content releases and even more frequent hotfixes, you can expect to see some bugs. Like how I one time here had a crash and I rejoined the server. Everyone saw me in the ship looking kind of normal, while from my perspective, I was ragdolling violently on the floor of the ship. Someone just had to put me out of my misery. That and a good number of other bugs and testy performance, even on high-end PC configs. The game is still in an unfinished performance state, with things like the Vulkan API and other optimizations being added in the future. But putting these visual inconsistencies and odd behaviors aside, Star Citizen in version 3.7 already shows off a lot of technical achievements, and I will be patiently waiting for more game systems to come online to test it further. And while I wait for that to occur, this video may have also intrigued you here. For me, Star Citizen's technical ambition is really admirable, and something to take note of regardless of one's perspective on the game, its gameplay, or its development. If you felt a tiny bit more intrigued at the end of this video, then please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you are already a subscriber, then please consider hitting that little bell in the corner to be informed as soon as Digital Foundry posts a video. If you would like to talk to me about Star Citizen or anything else, then please write a comment below or follow me and Digital Foundry on Twitter. And as always, this is Alex, bidding you farewell und auf Wiedersehen.